No llores.
Parents and children separated after illegally crossing the U.S.-Mexico border.
We're going to keep families together, but we still have to maintain toughness or our country will be overrun.
The president signs an executive order to stop that controversial policy, the first step in passing new immigration laws. And with the order in place, when will families be reunited?
The federal government is the one responsible when they capture these kids. We're ready to take the kids to their parents.
Hello, thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. A dramatic shift for President Donald Trump after more than a month of families being separated at the border. His executive order essentially reverses his administration's position, now keeping families together, but not ending his policy of zero-tolerance prosecutions of people crossing into the U.S. illegally.
If you're really, really pathetically weak, the country's going to be overrun with millions of people. And if you're strong, then you don't have any heart. That's a tough dilemma.
The president's order allows families like those inside this South Texas facility to stay together as they wait to hear their legal fate. The order does not in any way address those families torn apart. We know more than 2,300 children have been sent to shelters in at least 17 states through a complex network of multiple government agencies. And those familiar with the process say sorting out, bringing families back together will be incredibly difficult, especially for parents who've already been returned to their homeland.
I think we're going to see hundreds of cases where parents are, children are permanently separated from their parents and becoming wards of the United States.
At least 15 shelters that house immigrant children in Texas have been operating over capacity, some by more than 100 children. And it's something the state gave permission to do. Texas Health and Human Services granted temporary increases for shelters with an influx of children. One state lawmaker told us she essentially snuck into a shelter in her district after dark and found adult supervision, medical care, caseworkers, and therapists. Staff also brought in clean water because of arsenic in the local water supply, but she still questions the sustainability of the operation.
Well, the conditions are better than I thought. Kids should never be in tents. Kids should never be incarcerated. This is really dehumanizing, and it is unpractical, and it's not sustainable. Right now, the facility has space for 400 beds, but there is potential for expansion up to 4,000 beds. Is that the future of the United States?
As the conflict continues, some local Texas leaders are traveling to that same federal tent city in Tornillo, south of El Paso, for a first-hand look. Our own Phil Prazen joined Austin's mayor and council as they brace for some of those children possibly ending up in Austin. Phil?
Well, Josh, I'm 575 miles away in the city of El Paso, and what happens here on the border does impact the city of Austin, because what federal officials are doing now is they're taking the children that have been separated from their parents and they're spreading them across the country, including 138 children who have been placed in Travis County, and mayors are upset they've been left out of the loop.
It was a day of flags, signs, speeches, and city officials discovering what was happening in their own cities. Mayor Bill de Blasio woke up Thursday morning to find out 239 refugee children had been moved to New York overnight.
Had been sent 2,000 miles away. And they don't know when they're going to see their parents again.
The United States Conference of Mayors put in an official request to see the tent city, but officials told them it will take 2 weeks to get inside. So a lot of them just went up to the front gate themselves and started asking questions.
Austin City Councilman Greg Cassar drove to Tornillo and was front and center. He wanted to know why other elected officials had been allowed to see the children, but these city officials were not.
Any person at all on site in the facility, even if we were to wait some amount of time.
Sir, and I can just tell you what I'm told. I'm told that they're currently unavailable right now.
People will say, this isn't an Austin problem, this is a federal problem. What do you say to people like that who say, focus on Austin issues?
This is an Austin issue. These kids, before this zero-tolerance policy, might be in places like Austin. They might be in districts like District 4. There are kids. They would be my constituents.
And Josh, a lot of this was purely political theater. The Austin City Council was the only city council to join their mayor out here in El Paso, but they do have a tax dollar interest in this. Last year, the city of Austin approved $250,000 in immigrant legal support. mostly information, but also some legal defense. Mayor Adler told me out here in El Paso that that is not enough. In El Paso, Phil Prazen for State of Texas.
Thanks, Phil. Two different nonprofits operate these shelters. One, Southwest Key, headquartered in Austin, has received a lot of criticism about its housing just over 5,000 children. Our Steffi Lee spoke with the group's CEO about crowding and safety concerns and what's next.
Do you guarantee that these children will all be reunited with their families?
I would like to start that today, if we could. We have not gotten the guidance yet or the direction of how this is going to happen.
But Southwest Key Program CEO Dr. Juan Sanchez says since the kids separated from their families entered their facilities, his staff have worked to maintain their connections.
We try to communicate with the parents for the child so that they know where the child is and that they're here and that they can be, they know that the child is being taken care of.
Amid reports about the shelters operating over capacity, the nonprofit says it has been actively recruiting new staff with the influx of immigrant minors over the last few months.
We have now hired over 860 staff people who have been in training, because they got to be in training for a month before we put them with their kids.
There's still mounting criticism against Southwest Key Programs for operating the shelters to begin with.
And certainly one of the options is that we're ready to give this up.
But Dr. Sanchez says if not his organization, then who?
We do not know what will happen to these kids if we get out of the way. And we also know that there's very few, if any, others that understand the culture, understand the language, and are able to provide that service to these kids like that.
State records show, several violations within several of your facilities, dealing with health care, dealing with children getting into physical altercations.
It's just a human possibility that some of these standards are going to not be met. And we report every single one of those standards ourselves. I sleep very well at night. We have not committed any offenses. We are not doing anything that's illegal. We're taking care of children.
Steffi Lee joins us now. We know this nonprofit has received about $1.5 billion federal dollars in the past decade. Where is it spending this money?
Well, Dr. Sanchez says that 85% of that goes to direct child care, such as food, clothing, shelter, and medical care, and that 15% of that goes to indirect care, such as the salaries paying for the staff who take care of the children.
Now, most recently, we've understood that the U.S. attorney prosecuting these immigration cases might be looking at dismissing some of them because of the housing situation.
That's correct. We've confirmed that if a parent and child could not be housed together during the criminal case, they were looking at dismissing them. And that's because officials tell us that there are just very limited facilities to accommodate both the children as well as their families.
I expect we'll be hearing a lot more in the days to come. Thank you, Steffi.
Coming up, the long-term impact on children separated from parents.
The trauma of the children is palatable, visible, and very, very moving.
Our roundtable of reporters looks at the political fallout and Texas leaders in Washington on both sides of the aisle leading the charge to keep families together when State of Texas returns.
Right now, U.S. law says that immigrants can legally ask for asylum and enter the U.S. at a port of entry, but some Democratic lawmakers say that families waited so long they were pushed to cross illegally. On the Mexico side of the border, dozens of people say they waited for asylum and to legally cross into the country, but they say that federal agents told them to wait. One man we spoke to says families waited almost a whole month without shelter or money. They were only getting food and water from volunteers.
Every single day that I've come since Monday, the line's a little bit longer.
Doctors Without Borders, which has been treating migrants along the routes north to the United States, says many of the families fear for their lives and can't safely go back to their home countries. Still, many Americans living along the border think a zero-tolerance policy on illegal immigration is necessary. They say they've seen tragic and deadly consequences for people crossing the border onto their properties. Ranchers say they set up water stations for families cutting across their land.
We have emergency beacons. We're trying to save lives. And what I want to do is save the children's lives.
But that woman says what she and her neighbors do to try to help is not enough. That's why they support the policy. They say separating families while adults are processed helps children because it gives them a reliable place to get sleep, food, and clothing. But the real test, will Congress find common ground when it's time to vote on immigration reform? And will the president support it? And was the action this week only buying time? Anna Wernicke joins us from Washington.
Josh, lawmakers in the House of Representatives finally got a chance to vote on an immigration bill this week. In fact, they were supposed to vote on 2 bills.
Today we have an historic opportunity.
The first was co-sponsored by Texas Republican Michael McCall, who said it included all of the president's 4 pillars of immigration.
It secures the border by building a wall, ends chain migration and the diversity lottery, and provides a rational DACA solution.
McCall said his bill was a good first step toward addressing the crisis at the border.
This bill is a bad bill. It is not an immigration bill.
But some Democrats, like Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, said it was a step in the wrong direction.
The bill is not passed.
The House rejected the bill 193 to 231, with 41 Republicans joining every Democrat voting no. There was a second bill that Republican leaders called a compromise, but so many Republicans were unsure what was in the hastily written bill that leaders postponed the vote until next week.
It's really maddening for me to think that we as Republicans can't find a compromise solution.
Texas Republican Jody Arrington
that say if you have money for the border wall, I'm out. There are people that even in the Republican conference feel that way. And there are those that are on the furthest right that say any pathway to citizenship they feel like is a special accommodation.
Arrington says no bill is perfect, and to solve our immigration problems, Democrats and Republicans need to find a way to meet in the middle. For State of Texas in Washington, I'm Anna Wernicke.
Ahead, Governor Greg Abbott's thoughts as this immigration controversy unfolds across Texas and the nation. And a closer look at what Texans truly think about families separated at the border. Our roundtable of political experts weighs in next on State of Texas.
Welcome back. This week, the University of Texas and our media partner, the Texas Tribune, released a poll to see what voters think of separating families at the border. Take a look at the green bars here. There in the middle, Republicans are more likely to support the separation at 46% compared to Democrats there on the right with 11%. Now, we took a closer look at those numbers and found Republican men are most likely to support it at 56%. You see there in green again in the middle at more than half. That's compared to the orange bar on the right, showing nearly 80% of Democratic men are against it. And here on the left, overall, women from both parties were most likely to oppose the separations. For Inside Perspective, we turn to our political roundtable. Alana Rocha is with the Texas Tribune and Jonathan Silver is with the Austin American-Statesman. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we just looked at those polls. 56% of Republican men in Texas support the separation. Now, is that just supporting the president now that he's made his executive order? We know that poll was, conducted before that.
Right.
Are they going to support what he's changed his mind on so far?
You know, it's a poll, of course, is a snapshot in time. This one was done between June 8th and June 17th, with the last day then being Sunday or a week ago. Before this executive order, you know, it's hard to say. We even saw this with lawmakers not wanting to, cross the president on this issue. But yet, as soon as he signed the executive order, they came around condemning the process, saying that it was the right move for the president to make. So, it depends. But for the poll, the starkest difference was the partisan, with 85% of Democrats opposed to the family separation, 35% of Republicans.
Many Republican lawmakers have actually spoken out against these separations, like House Speaker Joe Strauss. He asked the president to end the policy. Perhaps one of the more scathing calls for action was Representative Jason Villalba out of Dallas. He went up against Governor Greg Abbott for not speaking out earlier. I have to read his quote. He says, "I am ashamed that my so-called leader is so controlled by his fealty to the president's myopic vision of America that he is frightened like a feeble squirrel from taking action. It is time to act now. Governor Abbott, can you hear me?" Do you think that had anything to do with Governor Abbott right after that sending a letter to Congress to say to take action?
You know, I spoke with the governor's office about that, and it wasn't clear whether there was a correlation between that scathing letter note comment from Representative Villalba. What was interesting, though, is, as Alana was saying, is a lot of Republicans in and outside of Texas did not want to cross the president. They didn't like this separation practice, but they were not quick to speak out against it. in my experience, when I was reaching out to a lot of lawmakers, it was me going to them. There was not a lot of volunteering of this information, and they were very careful. I tended to get a lot of responses later in the day, and you know, they said that they weren't okay with, or they were troubled by, or they were concerned with family separations, but they always stayed clear of criticizing the president. It was a lot of pivoting to Congress. It was a lot of, I don't like this policy, but I understand where he's coming from.
Now, Greg Abbott also said that Republicans don't have the votes in Congress to pass immigration legislation, and right after his executive order, that's also what the president said, really.
Right, and now, you know, at the end of the week, he was tweeting that Republicans shouldn't even bother trying to bring the more moderate solution up next week, which they postponed this past week after the failure of the more conservative measure. So it doesn't seem like this is going to be resolved anytime soon.
Based on everything you're hearing from Republicans, do you feel like that the president's going to have an even tougher time finding support in his own party?
I don't think even this topic will change support for the president in the Republican Party. I think this is just another one of those issues where there'll be some cringing behind closed doors among Republicans. The president, after signing this executive order, continued to talk about being strong on the border, kind of implied that there will still be separation. So there's a lot of confusion among lawmakers in Texas and in Washington. So it's unclear, but I don't think even this topic would seem to alienate the president.
Now, Lana, we just got a few seconds left.
Yeah.
Immigration has been a big, a topic of debate between Republicans and Democrats when it comes to campaigning. Clearly, the Democrats are against this, the separations and everything. But do you think that this is really going to hurt Republicans in November?
You know, I always call it political amnesia because voters are so busy they often forget, you know, in the moment what, you know, is infuriating them, and so when they go to the polls, if they're diehard Republicans, they'll vote Republican. But I think a lot of the images we've seen in recent days and weeks have disturbed some, and, you know, we'll see what happens.
We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Alana, Jonathan, thank you.
Personality disorder, major depression, problems in relationships, you know, not being able to keep jobs.
Once children are reunited with their parents, experts worry about the long-term impacts these separations could have. Straight ahead on State of Texas.
Some in the medical community worry about the lasting damage of separating these children from their families. The impact could stick around long after they're reunited. Jacqueline Powell looks at how some worry the trauma could follow them into adulthood.
For 4 years, Austin nonprofit Circle of Health International has been tending to mothers and children stopped at the border.
I have been trying to get people's attention about this story for a very long time.
CEO and founder Sarah Bonds says she's glad the country is finally listening.
This is not new, and there are a lot of liberals and progressives who are having a hard time digesting that information.
She hopes now Americans will put politics aside and focus on what these children are going through.
There are stress hormones that are induced that can set off other neurological disorders, chronic health conditions. And for kids whose brains and bodies are still developing, this is really dangerous for them.
It's such a concern that the Texas Psychological Association is speaking out.
You know, it can have kind of all kinds of long-term effects that then they have problems in adulthood, which also become problems for society and are costly too.
Dr. Elizabeth Middleton lists a number of serious issues.
Personality disorder, major depression, problems in relationships, you know, not being able to keep jobs.
For now, volunteers for Bond's nonprofit are doing what they can, providing migrant children with meals, showers, and medical care. But Bond's worries that can't fix the worst of it.
Trauma of the children is palatable, visible, and very, very moving.
Jacqueline Powell for State of Texas.
Housing these children is a big operation. The Office of Refugee Settlement has been involved since 2003. They tell us they served more than 40,000 unaccompanied migrant children last fiscal year. In Texas alone, they say they contract with nonprofits to run around 45 shelters for children. The average length of stay in their shelters is 57 days. And they say the children are typically released to family members in the U.S. as they await immigration hearings. The sight of children separated from their parents has inspired people to help by giving money. Social media campaigns brought new attention to nonprofits in Texas that help immigrants. The Texas Civil Rights Project and the group RISIS have seen a surge of donations. Both groups have staff and volunteers at the border. The Texas Civil Rights Project says it has connected close to 400 families with legal counsel. RISIS is using some donations to pay cash bonds for parents and to provide attorneys for their children.
It can range anywhere from $1,500 up to $5,000. So if you're looking at a family, I mean, like you said, that can easily turn into a 10 grand kind of a bond.
Two former Facebook employees learned about RISIS and started a campaign to raise $1,500 to cover the cost of reuniting one immigrant parent with a child. They saw the now famous picture of a crying toddler girl and said it reminded them of their own daughter. The image moved hundreds of thousands of donors. At last count, they'd raised nearly $18 million to help RISIS pay for legal services for immigrants. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.